Well, the Sussex Stakes has a rich history, and there have been some tremendous horses in the past that have won the race, and we are going to pick out our own favourite. Many people at home will have their own. But Steve, we'll go for you, and one from the very, very distant past.
Black and white. Going back to 1984, it's just a real favourite horse of mine, Chief Singer. I think most people will agree. Just give you a background to what he was. He was runner-up in what is, I think, universally accepted as one of the great guineas when El Gran Senor beat him. He then went on to Royal Ascot. He won the St James's Palace by 8 lengths, breaking the course record. And you've never seen a horse travel as well as he did that day. They then dropped him back to 6 furlongs. He beat the best horses, best sprinters in Europe to prove himself the best sprinter in Europe. And just to add to it, after he runs in this race, which we're going to talk about, they tried him over 10 furlongs in what's now known as the International, and he finished an honourable 3rd. So he was some versatile horse. In this race itself, he proved something else about him. He showed how tough he was. About 2.5 furlongs out, Rishi, his main danger, was ridden into him by Greville Starkey. I'm not being controversial. The jockey got a ban for reckless riding after. Chief Singer very much got the worst of it. He had been travelling well. He rallied inside the final furlong, went up his inside and won by half a length going away to cheers from the stands about his toughness. And just to give you an idea who he was out toughing, Roussillon next year won 3 of the most significant Group 1 races in Europe. The Queen Anne at Royal Ascot, the Sussex Stakes here, and he went to France and beat the French in the Moulin as well. So he was a really good horse, but he wasn't tough enough for the Chief.
Funny enough, sometimes when people look at races like the Sussex Stakes, at the time they don't appreciate just how brilliant a race it was. But as time goes by, you realise just how outstanding those horses were. And that you mentioned some of the horses that he beat in that race, like Roussillon. And I'll take you to 1989 and the year that Zilzal beat Warning. Like Canford Cliffs, Warning had won the race the year before. Zilzal, like Frankel, was an unbeaten 3-year-old coming to the Sussex Stakes at Goodwood. Zilzal only started his career at 3 when he won a race at Leicester. Then he went from Leicester to winning the Jersey Stakes at Royal Ascot. Then he won the Criterion Stakes at Newmarket and came here undefeated in 3. And he beat Warning, who struggled that day to keep up with those horses. He beat Shardy, who was good enough to win the Irish 2000 Guineas from the same stable as Zilzal. And he travelled beautifully. I know you mentioned how beautiful Chief Singer travelled, but so did Zilzal in that race. And Waldstrom was able to just do whatever he wanted in the race. He pulled out, won very easily. He went on to win the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes, beat Polish Precedent in a high-class renewal of that race. And his only defeat, and you can excuse a horse for any defeat, at the Breeders' Cup, came in America. Things were all against him. He got overly warm. But he was one of the great milers, Zilzal, one of the great winners of the Sussex Stakes. And Lydia, yours would be?
Well, my favourite Sussex Stakes memory is not just one of my favourite Sussex Stakes memory, it's one of my favourite racing memories, full stop. And I'm taking you back to 1992, and it was Selkirk in the Canford Cliffs role as the 4-year-old and a filly in the Frankel role in Marling. And I was keen on both Selkirk and Marling. Selkirk took a while to hit his stride. He broke the track record in the latter part of his 3-year-old year at Kempton. He then went on to beat all comers in an all-star cast in the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes at Ascot. He began his 4-year-old year imperiously. He won the Lockinge, he beat La Hib, a horse that went on to win the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot and beat Second Set. So Selkirk turned up for the Sussex Stakes like that. Also in the field was Second Set, who'd won the previous year's Sussex Stakes. And for good measure, there was also Sheikh Albadou in the race, who at that point had established himself as Europe's top sprinters, one of the best sprinters in Europe ever, because he'd won the previous year Breeders' Cup Sprint. Meanwhile, you had the 3-year-old Marling, who was quite a small, narrow little thing. She was unbeaten in her 2-year-old career. She should probably have been unbeaten turning up in the Sussex Stakes. She had bad luck in running in the 1,000 Guineas and ended up going down by a head to her tooth. But she made amends in the Irish 1,000 Guineas and then at Royal Ascot in the Coronation Stakes. So it was Marling versus Selkirk, plus the small matter of Second Set and Sheikh Albadou as well. And Selkirk went on a furlong and a half out, and Marling gutsed it out, went past him inside the final furlong and had enough left to repel Selkirk, bravely trying to come back at her. It was one of the best races ever, 2 brilliant milers, and the kind of race that everyone who was involved in it knew that they had just taken part in a great horse race. It was brilliant, and I think I probably broke the springs on my parents' settee cheering home Marling.
Well, that's pretty enjoyable for the 3 of us to take that trip down memory lane. Chief Singer for Steve in 84, 89 for Zilzal for me, and 92 for Marling. Who knows, in years to come we'll be talking about the clash in 2011 between Canford Cliffs and Frankel in the same terms. Well, one of the other eagerly anticipated races at Glorious Goodwood is the Group 1 Nassau Stakes for fillies, 3-year-olds and older. And Interesting to see how Snow Fairy gets on in this race, Lydia. She started her incredible run of success last season here at Goodwood.
Yes, she did, and that's when she announced herself on the scene, and her spectacular win over the course and distance of the Nassau Stakes said to her connections, let's supplement her at an extra cost for the Oaks, which she went on to win. She went on to win the Irish Oaks, but she was beaten by Midday in the Yorkshire Oaks, and on that form she is held by Midday. There's also no proof so far this season that she's come back to the kind of form that she showed when winning the 2 Oaks and when also beating the Colts when she travelled abroad to Japan and to Hong Kong. She was brilliant last year. Does she retain that brilliance? I'm not sure.
Sir Michael Stout's Crystal Capella put behind her average first run of the season with a stunning one last time.
I think it's really stunning, and I think she's been underestimated by the official handicapper. He's put her up to a mark of 120, which, for example, is right up there with anything in today's race. But they've taken the least positive view as they could of the race. The likes of Redwood, who it beat, would have entitled her to a mark in the mid-120s, which admittedly would be far in advance of what she's done before. So maybe they're right to be sceptical. But she just travelled like a dream in the Princess of Wales Stakes. Every stage of the race she was going to win, and until proved otherwise, I just have a feeling she just might be a really improved horse. And if she brings that sort of game, into the Nassau, then I think she's almost in pole position.
Yeah, what I liked about her at Newmarket was she won the race so quickly, Yeah, but she's always been a high-class filly that has had some training difficulties.
Would you agree that her best form so far has been over 12 furlongs?
Well, it's still good form over the 10, but 12 is probably her optimum trip.
And this Nassau Stakes is shaping up with Midday, with Snow Fairy, to be potentially quite a hot race. So therefore, do you think she's up to it at the trip?
I'm very hopeful because she does have good 10 furlong form.
Midday is going for an amazing third successive win in the Nassau Stakes. A tremendously likeable horse who perhaps isn't quite as good this year as she has been.
I think people are entitled to wonder that. She was absolutely scintillating at her best. She won against Rainbow View in the Nassau 2 years previously. Last time around she beat Stasolita, who's a brilliant filly in her own right. This time around she was asked to go on a long way out in the Coronation Cup when a colt beat her, Sir Nicholas Abbey, and only just managed to. And then last time she was below form in the Irish Pretty Polly Stakes when Misty For Me beat her. Now, if you can find excuses for her there, it might be the ground, then you can sort of be on her side. However, there is just a feeling that she might not be quite as brilliant this year as she was last.
I can't quite make out the race in Ireland. I think the winner on the day, he was a very good filly, and she loves being in front. And I talked to Aidan afterwards, and he said to him, we've only realised, she runs her best races in front. Just on the day, I had no excuse, really.
Do you think she's every bit as good at 5 as she was at 4 and 3?
In a lot of ways, we think she's actually maybe even be better than last year, but things haven't gone right. She ran a very good race first time out, because she normally takes a race or two to get her going. She usually sort of does her best the second half of the season, so we're coming into that now, so we'll see.